Today on Driftwood Conversations, I'm talking to environmental journalist and nonprofit founder Wendee Nicole and her daughter Joyce. What begins as a story about reporting in Uganda unfolds into something layered, complex, and filled with rich narratives including adoption, identity, resilience, and love across cultures and generations.
I'm Wendee Nicole, and I'm an independent environmental journalist for the past 25 years. And I'm also the founder and director of Redemption Song Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that works with the indigenous Batwa people in Uganda on community development and education, and providing opportunities for their people to become leaders and join together and try to bring about social justice for their people.
How did this start for you?
Really good question. So I received a $20,000 grant from Manga Bay, which is a environmental reporting online publication. Really interesting. So I've been fascinated with mountain gorillas since I was a kid, like literally 10, 12 years old. I was watching all the Dian Fossey documentaries, National Geographic documentaries, and I'd been to every continent, but I wanted to go to Africa. So as a journalist, I was like, okay, let me write a grant proposal to get me to Africa to see the mountain gorillas. And the proposal was based on how human livelihoods and conservation generally can coexist. And it was based on the work of Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom, she was the only female to have won the Nobel Prize in economics. She's revolutionized the field of economics. There are cases where when indigenous people are living in the forest, they actually protect the forest, even though, for many years, people just thought, oh, well, wilderness has to be without human beings inside. And so I went over there to kind of report on all of these ideas and how the Batwa people, who were the original inhabitants of the East Central African rainforest, when they lived in the forest, how they actually reduced poaching, even though, unfortunately, the Ugandan government evicted them in 1991 to save the mountain gorillas. So it was this case of a conflict where the human livelihoods were working with conservation, but nevertheless, the government and conservation groups removed the indigenous people from the forest where they lived. So at any rate, I wrote that proposal. I won the award. I was the first award that they had given for this particular prize. And I went over there, reported, but what really got my heart was the Batwa people. Yeah, I ended up selling my house and moving there and starting this organization to help the Batwa. Right. So after they were evicted in the 90s, they had nowhere to go. So they lived kind of on the edges of the forest often begging from people, squatting, until some nonprofit organizations bought them land and started helping them to kind of adjust to this new world.
Let me just go back so I'm really clear. The government evicted them from their own land to protect the gorillas or for some other reason?
On paper, to protect the gorillas. But in reality, when the Batwa lived in the forest, they were struggling, but it wasn't the fault of the Batwa people. It was poaching from other tribes and other reasons like deforestation. There was just a loss of a lot of habitat around there.
Did the government have any plans for the people to bring them to another area, or were they just abandoned?
They took guns, they went in the forest, they said, get out. They gave them nothing. There was absolutely no plans. It was a tragedy, really.
And so you moved there? Did you live with them?
I did. I moved there in 2014. So I went on my grant proposal reporting in January of 2014, and I moved back in September. So, yeah, and I lived there for 3 years, very close by in a very remote village next to Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, which is the historic homeland, ancestral homeland of the Batwa people. But now it is a national park, which brings in millions of dollars, but none of it goes to the Batwa people.
I want to hear more about this story, but before we go there, I want to introduce Joyce. Joyce, I just want to introduce you and have you in the conversation.
Hi, I'm Joyce. It's kind of, I was living in the village that she was helping. Like I lived there, but I always lived different places. But I heard about her about this person that came from America and was staying and helping the family in my village. And then I was living in another village just temporarily, like on break during Christmas break. And I came and then I met her. So then we kind of met that way. And I just continued doing schooling. Like I was being sponsored by another organization. And then I would come to the events I should have for the kids in the village. And those kids were also like my family members. So we would always come to her house, like the office house that she had.
Wendee, you adopted Joyce. What year was that?
So I officially adopted her in 2016. It was November 2016. So, and remember, I'd moved there in 2014. So it took 2 years, and I fostered her for a year of that and then went through the adoption process. And then a few months after that, we moved back to the US, but we've gone back and forth several times since. And so what she was mentioning was the first photo I ever took in the village in January of 2014 had her in it, as well as a couple of other kids. And I had seen the other 2 kids, but I hadn't seen the girl. And I was like, who's this girl? And why don't I see her around? And so some of her relatives found her where she was in another village. Having been orphaned at an early age, she would stay with different relatives. And so she came around and said, oh, here I am.
Joyce, did you know English at that point?
Not really. Like we're supposed to learn English at school that we're going to. That's like one of the languages that they teach us at school, but I never really paid attention at that time. So I skipped out on trying to speak English, but so not really.
Well, that's really incredible. So I just want to, so you two met, you were there on assignment originally, and Joyce, you were an orphan. You connected, but you didn't speak the same language. What went through your mind when you met Joyce?
You know, there were 30 kids in the village, and she was one of the community. And of course, we welcomed all the children to come once or twice a week. We would have a soup kitchen night where we'd feed them. And, you know, I just started observing and noticing that she, you know, didn't have either her mother or her father. And it was just something that I feel like, you know, spirit put on my heart. Like, you know, here's this girl, and she, you know, is kind of going around and not having like a whole lot of guidance. And so I really feel like it was just a very, like a God thing, a spirit thing that was laid on my heart. And even after that, I just kind of observed, you know, how is she, you know, is she being taken care of well? And, you know, I don't necessarily want to tell all the details, but it took some time, and she came to live with us and to take care, you know, we took care of her, and I was wanting to teach her some English and help her improve in her schooling. And over time, you know, we just, you know, it just felt like it was the right thing to do. And yeah, she came.
Now, when you say she came to live with you, was that there or here?
In Uganda.
Uganda.
Yes. So we had a house that we rented. And it sort of became like the house / community center for all the Batwa kids would come, play soccer, get fed. It was like the hub where all, you know, everyone came. And I lived in that house along with another staff member who would translate. So even though I didn't speak Ruchiga and she didn't speak English, we had a translator who spoke both language. And she was my manager, and she lived with me in the house. So that made it a lot easier to form that relationship.
Well, you said 2016 you adopted her, right? Okay, so since then, Joyce, your English sounds pretty good to me. Congratulations. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. You came to the States, Texas, right? Am I?
Yes.
You went to school. You acclimated to American life, which was really, really different, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And now you are going to Princeton?
No, Stanford.
Whoops. Okay. Stanford.
Yeah.
You're going to college in America. And you two have bonded and made a family. And Wendee, you have kids, don't you? You have kids.
Yes, I have two bio kids and they are in Texas, and they were out of the house and in college and having adult lives before I went to Uganda.
And how did they feel about this?
Well, because they were adults and they were already out of the house, they, of course, I talked to them before I made the final decision to adopt, but it wasn't, not living in the home, and it was like my decision. And so I don't know, they have been there and they've met her and they've spent some time with her. It's a complicated situation.
We didn't grow up together.
Right.
Okay.
It was just me and mom. She was just like a single mom with me, I guess you can say.
And Joyce, tell me right from the beginning, what was the experience
To America?
coming to America, learning English?
Actually came in 2017, just to clarify. So I don't know. I never really expressed my thoughts much. I think I kind of was like an observer. So mom would just take me and I'd just be like sitting there and just watching everything that was happening. My whole idea in my head was that we were just going to walk through this wall, like a little portal, and then we are in America. And it was not like that because it was so long. And I was like, when are we going to get there? But
the plane ride was really long.
It was really long. It was so long. I thought it was just, I had this whole vision of how America was going to be, and people walked on clouds here. And no, they don't walk on clouds. And I am very good at like adapting to new, like I know how to put myself in a place where I am not like familiar with it. So that was never really an issue for me, especially since I moved around a lot in the village to different villages with different people and always had to make new friends. I kind of like, when I first got here, I think my way of like adapting was I had to kind of like turn off my African side and focus on being in America. And that's what I did. I just became here and left that behind, which I don't know if that was just kind of my way of trying to like adapt. It wasn't because I wanted to forget my culture. It was more like I needed to focus on one thing. The first week was fun because she took me all sorts of different places, and we went, was it IKEA or is that the actual IKEA? What is that place? It's a roller coaster place, but I always think
Kima. We went to the Kima boardwalk in Houston, and the very first day. This is a great story. Can I tell this quick story?
Please.
First day in America, we'd gotten off the plane, we rested, and I told my mom, we need to take her to the Kima boardwalk. Girl has never seen an amusement park, a Ferris wheel ride. She's like, let's go. She wanted to go on all the rides, and she's very much like that, just a YOLO, you only live once, wants to embrace and check out all the new things. So that was, yeah.
Joyce, how old were you when you met Wendee?
8 or 9.
Well, they don't know their age, so we don't want to say that.
They don't?
Sometimes people in the village are unaware of like their birthdays. That's why we said 8 or 9.
Okay. Okay, now I get it. So, I mean, I can't even imagine. I've gone over to Africa. I've lived there for 3 months and then Borneo. But it's a lot different than going as a child. I was already a grown adult. And I lived in the villages, and I had enough experiences that I could adapt. And at times it was tough. Mm-hmm. As a child, I know you had to be adaptive, but I can't imagine. You have a lot of strength. Let me say that. And I think, wow, I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, just looking at you now, you're glowing. You're glowing. You're going to school. You're going to a great school.
Yeah.
And
I cannot be more proud of her.
Yeah, I have always been kind of like a fast learner. I don't always understand what I'm learning, but I always liked to read. I didn't understand what I was reading, but I always was like really good at reading and like pronouncing words that I didn't know. So I think that's probably why it was easy for me to learn English. Helped me kind of like discover like know more about like my tribe, even myself, and kind of like what my people are, and kind of also retell some of the stories that I have had in the past that I don't really tell as much or like write about. I don't know what people are going to be interested in, or like if this even matters. Or like when I first got to America, I didn't want mom to tell anybody I was a Batwa. And she's like, nobody knows what that is. I'm like, well, I still don't want them to know, because being in the village, we were always like, my people are like discriminated against a lot. And some of my friends, they like to like tell or will lie sometimes and be like, oh, I'm this other tribe, and not say that they're Batwa. And because we're so like discriminated against, that it becomes like a bad thing to be a Batwa. And so when I first got here, I was like, I don't want to bring that reputation with me here. Recently, in the recent years, I've started like telling people, and like, I am a Batwa, I'm this, and then writing about it. Probably one of the reasons why I got into Stanford. But sometimes I'm like, what if I'm like in my dome and then like they come knocking on my door and they're like, is Joyce Orishaba here? I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're like, we're here to inform you, but we made a typo by like send you an acceptance letter and you're not actually supposed to be here. And I'm like, oh.
Imposter syndrome.
So it's always just like everything is just like what is so shocking to be looking at my life as a Batwa, or like what I used to think about myself as a Batwa, and what my friends and back home also think themselves as, and then looking at like all the things I've like accomplished and done, and like my grade. I did that. Yeah.
What are you studying?
I think I'm going to do international relations. I want to work for the UN, maybe be like on the African Committee or Uganda or Indigenous something.
And what is the writings? Is it for school papers, or are you compiling the history of your village country people?
Some of them they're like papers for school, and which also like help me have to tell a story, and then it helps I remember some of the stories. And also I've written like a story, like a short 100-word essay for the New York Times.
Oh, that's right. I heard about that. Tell that in detail. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote a story about a moment of my life when I lived in Uganda before I met mom. And it was about me and my Aunt Joyce. I grew up without my mom because she died when I was really young. When somebody dies sometimes in the culture, when both of your parents die, they sometimes are like, this child is like cursed or something because she lost both her parents, or maybe it's like her fault or something like that. So nobody wanted to take care of me, but my Aunt Joyce, she was like 13 and I was like probably maybe like even 10, and I was a baby and she had to take care of me. She told me I was very difficult and she never wanted to have kids again, but she has two now. So, so she took care of me at a very young age, and I used to call her my mom when I was little because I didn't know. So that story that I wrote about was a time where my grandfather, he's a very cool person when he's not drunk, but he got upset at Lois because Lois made some money and she wanted to pay to get me some like snacks and like buy me a uniform for school, because she was my caretaker, basically. And my grandfather didn't want her to use that money for that because he wanted to use it to buy alcohol. She was like, no. So then he was like, you can't come to our house. You will not stay at the house. You have to find a place to stay. And Lois was like, where are we going to stay? So she's like, you know what? Fine. So she took me, she like dragging me all over the place. And he's like, you're not staying there and I'm going to stay with you. And then we didn't have anywhere to go, obviously. So, but in the forest where they dance for tourists, they have like showcases of like what the houses used to look like. So they can show tourists of like how their teepees used to look like, or their huts and stuff. So our grandfather, her dad really, had one. It was like a family one. So we last minute decision. It's like 8-9 p.m. at night, and we're trying to find a place to stay. And it's dark. I hate the forest. I know I'm about to. I'm supposed to like the forest, but there's bugs and there's snakes, and I'm scared of snakes. So at night, it made it worse. So we stayed in that teepee house in the forest by ourselves. She's like probably 9 or 10, and I'm like a baby, and we're there by ourselves with no blankets, and it's just like. It was a mess. And there is leaves that we put on, and we put them on the floor and to just make it more comfortable, like these ferns. Yeah, ferns. We use ferns. They're very soft, actually. So we did that. And then the next day, Lois was like, this is part of the story later on, is how I actually ended up going to mom's place, and I ended up staying with her from then. So when that happened, Lois was like, I don't know where you're gonna stay, but I need you to go to school, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, but why don't you go to the Mzungu's house, which was her, and see if you can stay there and tell them that I sent you. They might allow you to stay there because you're younger, but they might not allow me to stay because I'm older. So she sent me on a motorcycle, which is like the transport there, with the money that she had left. And I went to her place and I was like, I don't want to stay. I don't know what to do. And Lois told me to come here. and that's one of the ways how I first got to her place. And then I stayed there. She was in America at the time, but her staff workers were there.
It's an incredible story. I mean, Wendee, you must feel the same way. Most of us in America will never, ever have an experience like that.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think her story is so remarkable, which is why I've always just encouraged her, like, you know, people are going to want to hear your story, especially knowing how intelligent she was, how bright. I mean, everyone loves Joyce. She's got such a, you can just tell, like, sunny, fun-loving personality and very resilient and strong. And I always tell her, like, you absolutely deserve to be at Stanford more, you know, more than anyone. You have come from this and achieved all of this already, compared to someone, you know, who was raised with all of the privileges and money. You know, it's if where she's going, as far as she's come, she's going to do amazing things in her life, you know?
I think you've already done amazing things.
Exactly.
So Driftwood Conversations is about the challenges we all have. And I've already spoken to people in different age groups. And what I find is the younger generations, they already have a sense of they're here to accomplish, not even accomplish, because it's not about money and success. It's about being the best life that they can. And the older generations, I'm finding, we're looking back and saying life is really precious. Whatever I have left, I'm not going to waste it. And I'm looking at you. How old are you, Joyce, now?
I'm 19.
What an incredible life you have in front of you. You're open, you're positive, you're bright. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wendee, tell me more about how her journey has affected your journey.
Wow, great question. So it has just taken my life in a completely different and wonderful direction. You know, I moved to Uganda. You know, this wonderful child came in my life. I adopted her, moved back to America, still running my organization from afar with Ugandan staff there. And I go back and forth, and just becoming a mom again after my 2 bio kids have, you know, flown the coop. Something I didn't expect, but has just really been a joy. You know, not always easy. Anytime you have transracial adoption, I had to learn a lot about, you know, what it's like to be a Black person in America and a white person raising a Black child. Like, there was a huge learning, like drinking from a fire hose. And I felt like that was my responsibility to learn that, you know, as very interesting, like as a progressive my whole life, you know, still, and being very open-minded and very, you know, socially conscious, there was still a massive amount of stuff that we, as, you know, as a white person, don't know about or don't learn about unless we actively take the time to read perspectives from African Americans, from Africans, from, you know, so there was a huge amount of learning that I had to do. And so I think I'm very grateful for that, just to know that information and to be able to raise her and know that she was also understanding what it is, what, you know, there's a lot of opportunities in America, but there's also a lot of racism and there's issues you're going to face. And, you know, how do you overcome that? And how, you know, and also being able to know that I was going to keep her in touch with her culture in Africa was extremely important to me. And extremely important from having talked to and listened to the voices of other adoptees, how important that connection was. I made sure that she goes every year. When she got citizenship, we had to wait until that took 2 years. And then we've gone back, other than the pandemic, every year to spend time with her family and the village and her culture. And so, yeah, it's changed my life because, yeah, I now have a daughter. You know, I think we're very close and we enjoy a lot of the same things, and that's been fun.
Who did you read? Where did you find groups of interracial adoption parents?
There are some Facebook groups for transracial adoption. That was kind of my first introduction. And then there were a lot of books I read, just watching, movies with her also, that are presenting the American history in a more accurate way that maybe they'll get in a history class in school. Just all of it. Everything that I would read. I would talk to people, other adoptive mothers, but also other adult adoptees who have been through this and what they wish, their mothers had done or,
Yeah, she would read me like kid Black African American books. I watch movies. She probably taught me how to be Black American because I was very much like, probably if she wasn't like, kind of like do whatever you want, I'll probably be very like oblivious about like what actually happens as like a Black person. Because I'm kind of like a very like, oh, just do whatever you want. Nobody cares. Like the world is just, I'm just in it by myself. But she'd be like, okay, Joyce, you got to learn about this stuff. Or like, I wouldn't experience it as much, but you might, because we don't look the same. So she would like get me books as like kid books that like about like Black kids or like hair. Or she learned how to do my hair the first 3 years of my life, I think, right? Yeah, that was interesting. She did good.
We don't think about that. I haven't thought about it. I have no children, so yeah, but doing a child's hair, taking them to school, finding them clothing, introducing them to new experiences. You had to really do some research, didn't you, Wendee? Sorry.
Yes, definitely. Like with Black hair, as a white person, I didn't even know that they had to do their hair. It's not like our hair. I have blonde, straight hair. Black hair is a very interesting topic. It's very fragile. So Black women will do up their hair in, cornrows and then protect it and then have, the extensions, crochets, or different hairstyles. And so I had to learn because, again, in these transracial adoptive groups, they would say, you can tell an adoptive kid because their hair isn't taken care of. So I was like, well, I can't be that mom. I have to learn how to do this. And also just in their culture, the actual doing of the hair is a bonding experience. And so I could be like, oh, I'll just take her to the shop or the hair salon. But I felt like, well, first of all, being a relatively low income mom, I couldn't afford to go to the shops. But I was also like, I want to be any mom who would take care of their hair. And it was actually, a bonding experience. Sometimes frustrating because it would take all weekend, because I was very slow at it. So it would be like Friday and Saturday, the whole day, and we would be doing our hair. And it has to be redone every like 6 to 8 weeks,
So what did you do? You did cornrows?
I would do very bad cornrows and then crochets, which are like you do the cornrows and then you add like with literally a crochet hook, the extensions onto those. And so now then, and I learned from YouTube. I just watched it and I would do it. And then she then learned how to do her own hair, which is ultimately the goal because she can't have me doing her hair forever.
Yeah, this was my favorite part when she was learning. When she would have to do my hair, she would get a paper and like draw like a head shape, like like doing symmetric or something. Math that I'm like, okay, it's like, okay, if I do this on this part of the head, it's like drawing out my head, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are you doing?
Because heads are like round, and so you can't just do straight back. It has to come like. It's very complicated.
It was really funny, but it improved over time. Actually, it was first day was interesting, but over time we actually got really good.
When I was in Tanzania, in the little villages, there was always somebody that did hair. Mm-hmm. They had salons, and I saw some of those weavings. They were heavy. I mean, some of the white kids tried it out, went to the salons, and it was really hard for them to walk with it or to keep it. It gave them a headache.
Like the style they did?
Yeah, the styles they wove in these big, huge fabrics into the hair. But I never thought of the whole process. You're right. It's an art form.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's, I never got that great at doing the cornrows, but I'm still proud of myself. And I am just in awe of some of the work that they do in Uganda. They can do it so fast, and the patterns are amazing. And the cost, if we do it while she's over there, it's like, $10, $10 US. And if you had it done over here in the US, it's $300. So I had to do it out of necessity. But yeah, like I said, it was a bonding experience. And there's little things like that you don't think about when you're adopting or raising a child of another race. And that's very important.
Wendee, as a writer, who did you read? Did you read writers Black writers that you really appreciate and would recommend?
I really love Ta-Nehisi Coates. Between the World and Me is an amazing story. Have you read that one?
No.
So good. He's brilliant. Oh gosh, they're not coming to the top of my head, but yeah, I've read almost every book that's out there. Why did the Black kids sit together in the cafeteria? There's a book called that. There's, I'm Still Here, Austin Channing Brown. Yeah, I just read every book that I could. And, after the George Floyd incident, that became a really, much bigger on the public conscious, but I was doing all that reading beforehand. So, more books have come out, and I've tried to keep up with reading as much as I can. And now I'm trying to learn more about African history. So I read the Lumumba plot, which was about the Congo, which, Uganda is right next to Congo. And in fact, her grandfather emigrated to Uganda from Congo. So she has Congolese in her as well. Because the Batwa people actually live throughout Rwanda, Burundi, and the Congo in the whole rainforest. Trying to just educate myself more about the African history as well.
Are you still doing work there? Your organization, your nonprofit's still there?
Yes.
How is it working? What's it doing now? What is the focus?
I say community development and education are two major components of what we do. Community development, meaning we've got the village clean water, we've built houses, we are creating a sustainable food forest where we have planted around 4,000 native and fruit trees. It's like permaculture where we want to, so outside of the rainforest, almost everything is deforested. So although we can't return the Batwa to the forest because it's owned by the government, we can return the forest to the Batwa. And being a conservationist and an environmental person my whole life, I said, well, let's plant trees. That's like such a wonderful thing for both the children and the adults to do. So we're reforesting the hillsides, and as those trees grow up, it will create, a forest where they're living. And then the fruit trees are there to provide food security for them in the future. So it's going to take some time for the mangoes and guavas and jackfruits and avocados to get to the point where they're producing these fruit. But that's kind of my vision, is to help the Batwa people who have lost something to have something that will not only sustain them, but then ultimately they'll be able to sell these items in the future once the trees are big and there's lots of fruit. And then we're also doing coffee, Arabica. So they're learning a trade. So then the second component is education. And so for all of the children, we sponsor them in schools. Uganda has they have free education in government schools for primary only, but they're very, very poor schools. So if you want to get any kind of good education, you have to go into a private school. So we sponsor, meaning we find sponsors in the US that want to support these kids. It's like $45 a month. And that covers like school fees, school uniforms, supplies. They do boarding basically. So which is great because if they go home, they're living on a dirt floor, with almost nothing. And sometimes they don't get one meal a day, let alone 3 meals a day. At school, they get 3 meals a day. They have a nice bed. They have clothes. They have guidance, and they're learning. In between, when they're on the school breaks, that's when we do our educational soup kitchen, and the kids can come over. They play soccer. They get food. Usually I bring them some new clothes because they usually only have like one shirt on their back. And I know there's like a lot of poverty porn and pictures of Africa as being this very underprivileged place. And that's not always the case. There is a lot of developed Africa, cities in Africa, art and music in Africa, design and fashion in Africa. But this village and where we are working is unfortunately one of the poorest, if not the poorest communities. The tribe is considered one of the most marginalized tribes in the world. So they are struggling, and they're struggling more so because of the cultural loss. So having been removed from the forest, the older generation who never went to school have often turned to alcohol, and as a way to kind of cover the pain, but also just because it's very addictive. They're small sized people. They don't have the genetic biology to break down the alcohol. So alcoholism is a big problem, and that leads to, sometimes lack of care for the children. So putting them in school helps, on multiple different levels. So that's like a huge focus, because ultimately I want to work ourselves out of the need for the nonprofit. I want the kids to run it in the future. I want them to be trained up to become the managers, to have their own visions of what they want for their people, but we need Joyce, and we need other of her age mates and peers to get through school and to get to university.
There's another friend of mine, Sam, who is working in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also part of the podcast. So, and I would love at some point, I'm trying to work out how to do a nonprofit to support volunteers 20 to 30 to go over there and experience volunteering at a nonprofit.
Wow.
When I get it started, I will contact you and we'll see.
Yeah,
what we can work out.
Yeah.
Because they're in Jakarta, and again, it's a very small village and impoverished. So, Joyce, what do you want to do? Do you have an idea? You were talking about the UN and working, but I keep hearing you as a writer. Do you think you'll write, or?
No, probably will not be a writer. That's my mom. I like to tell stories, and I think the reason why I probably write is because I have something to write about. When I'm passionate about something I'm writing about, then it becomes easier for me to write, but that's not something, and I repeat, something I don't want to go into. But maybe like telling my story would be a way, maybe like through film, movies, so documentaries is one of the ways I'm possibly looking at my career in that way, and also just finding a way to advocate for my people and for like marginalized groups and stuff. So I might go to law school, because the Stanford Law School building is always looking so nice. I'm like, wow. I would like to see myself there one day. So that's also a big possibility that I might do. So I have some kind of position where I'm able to help my people and just set up a legacy for the kids coming up behind me in my tribe.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about, like, I'm really interested in learning about screenwriting, and she might minor in film and media studies. And so I thought it would be really an amazing way to tell their story through creating not necessarily maybe a documentary, but maybe even like a fictionalized, like reservation. I think it's called Reservation Dogs. There's a TV show about Native Americans that's been really highly critically acclaimed, because very few shows actually just tell the life of how a Native American or an indigenous population lives. They either tokenize them, or they, make this person one character in a series, but to have a whole show, maybe, fictionalized, but about either our story, and that would include the part in America and the part in Uganda. So this is kind of like just an idea at this stage, but I think it would be really exciting and fun to collaborate on something like that.
Keep me posted on that one. I love documentaries. Yeah. So I have one other question. Take us a little off route here. Wendee, you talked about God touching your heart, I think, in the beginning. What is the religion of Joyce's people, for the Batwa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly? Yeah. And how does that come together in any way for you, for both of you?
Well, I mean, I'll let her answer that.
I answer that because, I think, as maybe research might say, is that a lot of indigenous people have like the beliefs of like nature and like not God, but when they were kicked out of the forest and were introduced to this new area, kind of like a new culture, they're Christians. We are Christians. So I was like, my grandmother in Africa raised me as a Christian. So most of the people in the village, we go to churches and like we're all Christians. So I think, and she's already Christian, my mom here. So it was just an easy like bonding to also already bond over. So it wasn't like she didn't have to change me or have to like change the patois in any way. So it was easy for her to like give us lessons as kids about like God and stuff, because we already believed in that and we already learned that in school. We have to learn that in school.
I don't know who this would be for, maybe Wendee.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your belief, and especially now with all your experiences in the world and raising Joyce, that your inner resource expands beyond religion?
What do you mean by inner resource exactly?
I guess the search for God, or the resource we use to get through hard times. Could be God, it could be the church, it could be, going to the church every Sunday. Or
my thoughts on religion are fairly complicated and progressive. I'm a liberal Christian. Sometimes I even fear to speak of it for fear of the backlash, sadly, from Christianity. But, God is love. That's actually a Bible verse. And I mean that literally. And I think spirit, whatever religion around the world, whatever, and I have done some reading. Even actually, I used to be an atheist before I became a Christian. So I was like, I read about Islam, I read about Buddhism, I read about, different religions. And I felt like, God is love. And I love the grace that is embodied in, in Christianity, the forgiveness, that I don't have to do stuff to get to God. That's what appealed to me. And so even though faith is a big part of what we do over there, it's more of like, let's be the hands and feet of Jesus. Let's take it literally when he says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I think sadly, a huge portion of at least American Christians kind of tend to overlook that and focus on things that I think aren't even mentioned in the Bible, So compassion for the poor, grace, forgiveness, love, just literal love guides what I do.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So that's in your heart already. That's already part of both of you, I gather.
Yeah.
And any future plans? Are you going back to Africa anytime soon?
I'm not sure. We might go this year. We did go like twice last year. But we might go back this year. If not, we've been going every year since, so I won't be too sad if we don't go this year. I love going there. It's just always amazing for me. And I love that she's put so much effort for me to be able to go back, because now I'm like spoiled of having my home. So if I didn't have it, I would actually, I don't know what would happen to me.
Your African home.
My African home, yeah. My African, like being a part of them still, it has been a very big part of like my life here in America.
Yeah. And like music, I have just loved that she has embraced the African music, the Ugandan music, and that has kind of kept her. And then I get into the Ugandan music, and she, like, if you think about it, like as a young person, when she was there, surrounded by all the Ugandan music, playing at the bars, playing around or dancing to it. And so I think that's really cool that she used that as a way to every day keep connected to her people and her country. And now she's even reaching out to some of these famous Ugandan musicians, and she's become friends with them. And so that's like been a really cool thing. Yeah. So, but I do plan to go back at least either in January or in like August or September.
So Joyce, how are you reaching out to the musicians? Are you writing them letters or calling?
Yes, online letters.
It's not letters at all. I'm so informal. I'm literally just like, hey, what's up? Like
on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram. And I think that just catches them off guard, and they're like, okay, hi.
So we went and we hung out. This last time we were there, this musician called Mudra D.
He's really cool.
He's pretty famous in Uganda. And he was like, oh, come over. So I went over with her because I was like, well, I don't know this guy. And he was so nice. He's like
cooked us food and like brought like a whole thing. And he was very nice. He's very sweet. It was just weird. I was the one concerned. I was like, are you sure you don't even know me? All I did was literally like make a video with your song and then said, hey. And he's like, no. And it was just like also shows how like welcoming sometimes like people in Uganda can be. And it's just awesome. But yeah, there's been a couple of people that I've like just randomly reached out. My goal is to reach my favorite artist. Her name is Sheebah. And she's the goal.
And then there's another young woman named Rama Pinky, or she goes by Pinky, which incidentally is the name of our cat. But so Pinky is the same age as her, I think 1 year older. Mm-hmm. And she's like got a beautiful voice and she's fun. So they connected and we did a benefit fundraising concert. So we brought her out to the village and she performed, and our Batwa kids were like the backup dancers, and Joyce choreographed the whole dance. And so that, you know, just being able to do these fun things that include her culture and then our kids, you know, that we sponsor and support in school. And it's just, it shows our kids, like I want to get our kids out of the village to see what is life beyond just, you know, your parents, what they're struggling with, and how did we get, you know, how can we get you to have dreams and visions and ideas for your lives beyond what you might otherwise see, because they also love music. It's a huge part of the Batwa culture is music and dancing.
They love dancing way too much. They'll wake up, the first thing they do is play music, and they're dancing from like morning into the afternoon or until they have to go to bed. And we're like, we can't do this. It's time for bed. And it's awesome. And I think, so sometimes what Mom was saying, like how I still connect to my culture through music, is that I keep myself updated to the new songs. So when I go back, I'm able to like have something in common with them, even after maybe being away for like 2 years or like a year. I'm able to be like, oh, I am up to date with these songs that you guys like to dance to. And then we just connect with that. So
where do you get that information? TikTok and Instagram?
Yeah, I look it up, or I just like follow some of the artists now, and I'm friends with some of them. So I'm like, so that works too. But yeah.
That's great. Send me some links and I'll put them, because I'm going to do a Substack to talk about this episode. And I could put links to some of the artists and anything, and the foundation for sure.
Wonderful.
That's good.
And well, we've hit close to an hour, so we'll kind of wrap up. But boy, you both touched my heart. I thought this was going to be amazing. And it was even more so than I imagined. And I'm sure you didn't even think of it as that it's just this spark, particularly, well, both of you. I can't even separate it. You both have this resilience and this spark and this love of life that you live it fully. And there's so many people that feel depressed and victimized and caught. To see the other side of it is what this podcast is about, for one.
That's wonderful. So yeah, and we've been through struggles. We've had ups and downs, and I struggle with depression. And honestly, she has got such a positive attitude, and she is the one that keeps me going and inspires me more than anything. Just to see, her resilience and her positivity.
She's the emotional one, so I guess opposites attract.
We'd love to come out there and meet you in person. And if you're ever here in San Diego, let me know. And
we'd love to have you here. And I'll come visit and let you know.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for making the time.
I'm glad we made it work while she was here, because I know she always makes all the conversations fun.
It's such a great story about the two of you. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Wendee and Joyce's journey is about listening to the heart, crossing borders, love, and building something new from the pieces life gives us. If their story touched you, I hope you'll join Driftwood Conversations again and check out Redemption Song Foundation, Wendee Nicole's nonprofit. The link is in the show notes, and you can also explore the Ugandan music Joyce loves. It's full of joy, rhythm, and resilience, just like her. I'm so grateful to share this moment with you. Until next time, take care and keep listening to Driftwood Conversations.
Tell about that tune, I fly to Ethiopia. Meet a girl from Uganda. She says she come from Kampala. Girl with the biggest bumper.
Everybody chasing, a man of them and chase. Everybody knows, say, Jamie a place. Everybody dip on the party when they stay.
You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the fat boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody sing boom boom boom. You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the right boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody goes so boom boom boom.
Mama said she said she had the best panty, so me tell her work on it, baby, give me every day, me love the taste. She said she wanna wine panty, so me tell her work on it, that's why me rolling, baby, every day. Yeah. Anytime we over the cage, show them what you got, your mama gave you. Baby, young quere que kundo, quere que. We wanna show you on the east side, we wanna take it on the west side. Me wanna show you all the world and give you all the world when you all the one in me bed. The way baby is a sweet body, the way you shape and the way you wine for me. Babe, rolling cockadee.
You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the fat boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody sing boom boom boom. You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the right boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody goes so boom boom boom. Saga saga now. Man a gangster from the garrison, me have the license for punch you like a Mike Tyson. Me have the anaconda, me nah no pipe 10, me nah in a buy 10 girl for every season. For every reason, them charge me for treason. Cause them found out them wife a come for the feeding. Cause they know me have the remedy for them cancel. Every girl have to consult the sex counselor.
I say come to me, if you want look, baby just come to me. Lingo de the saint, I say just come to me. Baby just step it, what don't go, come kanya. Don't go what it is, you young. Saga, then I put you in a line. Now could be a put it is and pull it over. Ziggy Zaga, then I put you in a line. Now could be a put it is and pull it over.
You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the fat boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody sing boom boom boom. You see that girl with the fat boom boom, and she got the right boom boom. When she whine on the dance floor, boom. Everybody goes so boom boom boom. Saga saga na, saga saga na.
Yeah, it's done.